Hi everyone, my name is Nurhan Sheikhoun, and today I'll be talking about will you ever change? I bet each one of us has a habit, behavior, or a character trait we'd like to modify, whether it has to do with our mental, physical health, our relationships with others, or our intellectual development. You prepare to embark on your adventure. You find yourself setting the goal, deadline, available resources, and all the relevant requirements. However, after a few days or a week, you find yourself giving up. Is there a problem with you, the way you establish the objective, or the methods you employ to achieve it? Why does it happen? Can we even change? Multiple factors combine to create a complicated situation, making it harder to identify the underlying cause. However, the question of when, how, and why regarding change is a continuous one among several specialities. This applies to you as well as several individuals with various professions, backgrounds, environments, objectives, and personalities. It enables us to consider that different personality types, rather than just one type, can change. It will need an extra effort on your part to replace your laxity with self-discipline, your inclination with enthusiasm, and your ego with self-reflection, to change the diet you've been intending to adopt, the career you've wanted to change, or the difficult conversation you've been wanting to have. There are several definitions of change available, but I'll highlight my favorite one. Anything or state that is different from what it once was. It may not be a total transformation. However, the state that it is different, and that an observable difference is witnessed when comparing the two states. So, when do we change? Well, various viewpoints support and oppose the concept of the ability to change after a certain age. It's crucial to note that the big 5 traits are the personality traits that were measured. William James Harvard, a psychologist, said that by the age of 30, the character has set like plaster and will never soften again. Another psychologist mentioned that our basic personality traits don't really change. But that doesn't mean we can't change and behave in ways that are opposite to our true selves when the situation calls for it. So, how does that relate to your personality? Well, a quote from a psychologist mentioned that we see that the very big changes you see from early adolescence to early adulthood are greatly muted after 30 to 35. You tend to become more neurotic, more introverted, and less open to new experiences. They also tend to become more agreeable and conscientious. After the age of 30, these same trends are seen, but the rate of the change does. So, why should I change? Well, there are several explanations to why. One umbrella term explanation is the self-determination theory, which explains that when someone feels independent, it indicates that they are making the choice, the change for themselves, and not from some outside pressure. Meaning, it'll originate from you and not from outside. So, why do we refuse change? Well, there are several reasons for that. One of them being overloading yourself with information by using several resources, such as subscriptions to multiple self-help publications or books. You choose the easy route and a quick one. You make it a feature of your character and you cling on that as an aspect of yourself. You make ambitious and unreachable goals. So a plan should be adopted that takes into consideration that it takes 18 to 254 days for a habit to establish. According to Scott Jeffrey, he said that the body complex inertia actively fights physiological changes, even if they are positive, to preserve your body's neutral state, meaning that it requires adaptation to change. Another was the attachment theory, which mentions that a certain kind of childhood upbringing may contribute to a pronounced reluctance to change. Resistance to change may be rooted in a lack of intimacy and inflexible routines in infancy, which are frequently accompanied by negative reinforcement. So in the realm of change, there are several identifiable theories, categories, and models discussed. The trans-theoretical model stages of change is an ongoing flowchart of decisions that is mostly identified and used in habit modification and cessation. To better understand this concept, we can consider smoking. It begins with pre-contemplation, which is usually defined as a stage preceding contemplation, a stage in which there is awareness of the issue, but no intention to commit or change the action. In this case, the smoker is unaware of the effects of smoking on them, and thus has no desire to change. But a common trigger, like a discussion from a loved one, manifestation of negative effects, results in a surge of self-awareness, where they are willingly understanding of the effects of smoking. Preparation is the intention to take action to address the problem, which results in a productive action, an active modification of the behavior. This can manifest as visiting the smoking clinic, speaking with your GP, or seeking assistance for it. Maintenance is the next stage, which refers to a long-term change in which the fruits of one's labor replace the old. Continuous self-discipline and lowering your self-hatred enable this stage to succeed and reduce the likelihood of the next stage occurring, relapse, in which old patterns of behavior resurface. It's also a very important stage to recognize. You may either carry on where you left off or stay still in the situation. This is where inner communication has a significant impact. Relapse is a trap that is easier to slip into when you tell yourself, look, you can't change, so give up, every time you do. Positive results have been shown through the utilization of the model. However, we should understand that it's not a one-fits-all. So how do you change? We define the type of behavior. There's automatic behaviors, which are unconsciously performed behaviors, where the actions we take without being aware of them. There's burning, which is the act of acting in response to an intense need or impulse. And there are common actions. We do this on a regular and conscious basis. Despite being the least ingrained, these are nevertheless the most challenging to alter. Your second step is establishing a system. There are a couple of things to realize and implement in your system. One of them being dividing your steps into small, attainable goals. Slow and steady wins the race. The reason for the change is essential. It has been discovered that tying the goal to one's income, interpersonal connections, or physical well-being enhances the probability that the planned behavioral changes will succeed. You evaluate your environment by the social reconsideration of your bad conduct to recognize how it impacts others, and identifying and cultivating supportive relationships that promote the desired transformation. Reinforcement through rewarding the desirable behavior while minimizing incentives for unfavorable conduct. You re-engineer your environment to include cues and reminders that support and encourage healthy behavior while removing those that promote harmful ones. As an example, if I made the decision to start listening to those around me more and interrupt them less, I'd like to see and set an example for others. First, I would determine why I'm doing it and whether it's a voluntary or involuntary action. Second, I'd begin the planning process by allowing for baby achievable stages. I may, for instance, imagine myself to be the one speaking and not interrupting myself to attempt to reduce the likelihood of doing so. Additionally, replacing interrupting with body language that indicates full attention to the conversation. Environmental possibilities like social cues are an excellent illustration. You add praise for minor accomplishments, like the ability to have one conversation without interrupting or not interrupting excessively. You attach change to a monetary or long-term goal by enabling yourself to believe that by listening more, I'll be able to provide better healthcare services and advance in my job. I can connect motivation to that. So why should the healthcare system know about this? Well, the decision to change one's lifestyle is required for several common ailments, including diabetes, hypertension, management of mental health, quitting smoking, and alcohol abstinence. We must try to understand the timeline, the cause, and the methods to reverse it, while speaking with someone and observing the impact it has on their life. This is accomplished with motivational interviewing and behavioral therapies, which benefits from an understanding of the many phases of transformation. I'd like to mention that it is your responsibility to change. Life experiences, both good and bad, are irreversible. Those irreversible mistakes, whether they involve you, other people, a career, or monetary decisions, are unchangeable. And it is your responsibility to deal with the consequences of those decisions, both then and now. You can't force change, but you don't need a life-altering event to make the change and decision either. No matter what any online forum or hack says, success takes time and effort. Despite your best efforts, some things cannot be altered. As Damien said, it's important that we know this. For a long time, people thought they didn't. Now we're seeing that our personalities can adapt, and this helps us to cope with the challenges that life throws at us. Thank you.